Hey, good morning, everyone. All right. Let me first of all make a login into the org, and then we're going to discuss the rest of the things. So we have created a 30 days trial account. Why? Because the developer edition account, what we have created, does not provide the facility to deploy something. So this is the reason we have created a 30 days trial account, and this 30 days trial account comes up with deployment settings and chain sets as well. So yesterday we did one deployment. The second part of that deployment is still left. What we did is like we again have created two sandboxes. One is developer sandbox. Let me make a login into that one as well. And the second sandbox what we have created is a UAT sandbox. This one is a UAT sandbox. So we have created two sandboxes within this. And then what we completed yesterday was the deployment from one sandbox to the another sandbox. That means we deployed a module from developer sandbox to UAT sandbox, right? Developer sandbox to the UAT sandbox. Now today, I first of all would complete the second part of that. And the second part of this deployment is like now once we got something called as UAT sign off, that means the user acceptance testing has been performed, and this module is now ready to be deployed to the production environment. So this one is, by the way, is a production environment. And usually, understand one thing, and usually this part of deployment, when we are trying to deploy something from the UAT to the production, this part is usually done with a separate team, and you are not being a part of that. And the name of that separate team usually is the release management team. There's a team, but see, this all depends on organization to organization. There is no standard to this. It all depends on the size of organization, and it varies. Of course, it varies between them. But you must have an idea about this, right? You must have an idea. Otherwise, we are even capable to perform this, right? Although in some of the companies, there is a separate team called release management team, called deployment team. I mean, these guys are usually take this responsibility whenever something has to be launched onto the production, when something has to be deployed and migrated to the production. So these guys, these teams, this team would rather take this responsibility. All right. But in our case, we are going to do that. So yesterday, I have told you about like how you can connect the environments from how you can connect the environments, right, by using deployment setting. So particularly for UAT, for this sandbox, I have enabled in both direction. That means you can obviously transfer something from UAT to production, else you can transfer, you can do something called as a back deployment as well. You can transfer production things from the production to UAT. But from UAT and the connection between UAT and developer sandbox was one way. That means only we can transfer things from developer to UAT, and that we already have seen. Now I wanted to transfer a module from UAT to the production. I wanted to transfer something from UAT to the production. So let's repeat the same process what we did in yesterday's session. So I first of all would go to chain sets, and because I wanted to send something from UAT, right? I wanted to send something from UAT to production. So whatever you wanted to send, you first of all would have to create an outbound chain set. And we are not going to repeat the mistakes what we committed in yesterday's, right? So we are not going to, this time we'll try to make it more impeccable so that we can straightly do the deployment in the first version itself. Otherwise, we're going to repeat the versions. All right. So I'm creating an outbound chain set. I'll click on new button and I'm going to give the name as hiring manager. Let me give the name as module 1 for now, and we're going to see it later on. Hiring manager module 1. And I'll save it. Now, let me add the components as well. The first thing what I'm going to add would be the custom object. So I'm going to make a selection of custom object from here. This is that object which I wanted to add to chain set. So I have added the object. Yes. The next, I wanted to add all of the custom fields inside in that object what we have created. So once I'll go to the list of custom fields, and I would be adding all of the fields of hiring manager only, HR, email ID, and location. So I have like, or you can else make a click onto H. No, it's not wrong, not like that. So I would rather click like this only. So contact number belongs to this hiring manager, HR ID, location. Is there isn't anything more? I guess no. So I'll add all of them to the chain set. Then I would also add the tab, the custom tab what we have created for this object. I'm going to add that as well. So I would be adding a custom tab for this. It is getting loaded. So now this is that custom tab. I'll add to the chain set. I'm not adding an application so far, but after this all, I would also add a profile. Why? Because yesterday we have seen that we committed changes to system admin profile. All right, but we haven't added that. I also have to add the page layout. Yes, that is also one more thing. So because we didn't add that system admin profile, the second time we create a version number 2 for that. For page layout, I didn't create it although, but that also has to be done. So I have added system admin profile because that is also something we have committed the changes. Now page layout as well, I'll have to add. Yesterday we forgot to do that. So I'm adding a page layout here. These all are the page layout. I would be adding hiring manager page layout because we have landed the fields, those custom fields. We have landed the by default it is not going to appear, right? So I have also this time I'm trying to make it more precise without any mistake. So I'm just trying to do that. I'm trying to make this work more impeccably. Let's see what happens. Otherwise, we'll have to come back to this, create the version number 2, and whatever has been left, we'll try to cover them in another version of chain set. But I guess this much is sufficient, right? So I have added all the custom fields. I have added the object custom fields tab, the page layout, this all related to object. And we made a changes to system admin profile because we make this object and the fields enabled to the system admin. We also have to deploy this as right? Now this everything has been added into your chain set. Let's upload this. Let's upload this. So there's only one environment from which you can send this, right? We did not connected this between developer. If for example, I'll make it bi-directional. All right. So there would be two names that would appear over here. Let me show you that as well. Okay, this is my module. And if I would go to this is developer sandbox, and let me show you one thing. Let me show you one thing. So if I would go to, let's say, deployment setting, and now, if I would add this from UAT, if you allow the inbound changes and you make it save, that means from UAT, now this is going to become bi-directional. All right. So from UAT again, you can receive something back to this environment. So this becomes bidirectional. All right. So now if I come back and I'll now try to upload this, see, there's a difference what you can see. So now there are two environments available. That means you can transfer from UAT to production, or you wanted this to be get uploaded from UAT to developer sandbox. So this is like how in real time it looks like to be. But I wanted to carry forward this to production, and that's why I have selected production environment. Let me now upload this. So this message would appear that your environment, I mean your upload is getting progress. So we'll have to wait for some time. We would have to wait for some time. And as and when it would be uploaded, see, it has been uploaded. It has been uploaded to production. This time it was very quick. That's a good thing. So now I'll have to go with the production. This is my production environment. Go to setup. Go with the inbound chain set. There you are going to see the name of that version which you just have deployed. So I always say this, like before deployment, you should always validate. You should always validate. And because right now you are not having any coding component, don't go with these options. Right? Don't go with these options. What is the purpose of this option? I'm going to tell you probably today itself. All right. So right now I'm just going with default, and then validate. Okay. Onto this page, click onto deployment status because we wanted to see that. So deploy validation in progress. As you can see, validation is succeeded, right? Validation is succeeded. It does not have any error. Go back to this name, and this time, because it already have been validated, now click on to deploy. Click on to deploy and see the status. Oh, my goodness. All right, so deployment again have been succeeded. All right. So we are expecting everything has to be deployed properly. So I am adding this into this application now. After this, I go with tab bar customization, and I must see that object over here. See, the tab name is here. You have to add it, save it. And when you go to this, let me see whether I have all the fields or not. Yes, you have, right? Yes, you can see you have all of them. So this time, we did not committed any mistake, and that's the reason we deployed this successfully in our first attempt only. All right. So that is what is something called as forward deployment. You deploy it from one sandbox to another sandbox, and from this sandbox to you deployed this to production. That is something called as forward deployment. Now let me teach you about backward deployment. Sometimes, rarely, but this also, this also happens. Like you make certain changes in the production, and then you wanted your environments to have those changes. Now for this, before performing this deployment, the back deployment, I wanted to talk about one more thing. See, usually what happens is like there's something called as sandbox refreshing. I'll show you. There's something called as sandbox refreshing. So now if I go with this sandbox, this would show me the list of all sandboxes. This will show me the list of all sandboxes. All right. So what happens is like, if you would refresh a sandbox, we have developer sandbox, and refresh interval is 1 day. Oh, that's good. So if you would refresh a sandbox, हाँ एक चीज और सुन लो, पहले ये कंप्लीट करने दो यार. So if you would refresh a sandbox, like if this is a developer sandbox and I refresh this sandbox, so what would happen in that case is like, it would contain everything what your production have. Now, what does it mean? So for example, I inside in the hiring manager object, right now we have all these fields, right? Right now we have all these fields. So I created one new field inside this. So let's say I have created a new date field. All right, I created a new date field. The name is, let's say, joining date, and save. Next, and next, and save it. So now I have one more field over here, right? I have one more field. If you would go to this, and inside in this, you have one more field called joining date, right? Joining date. Let me give the values to that as well. Joining. I mean, just try to understand this joining date. So you created this directly on production. We usually avoid that. We usually avoid that, right? So even that, if it's a small change, we try to always follow the standard process. What is that? Whatever you are creating, create it first inside a sandbox and then deploy this to production gradually, right? Gradually by following the standard path, right? Whatever the standard path your company is following. Like in my company, it's something like, you create something, you move it to QA, then QA would approve it. You move it to UAT. UAT would approve it. And from UAT, some other team, release management team would take care of this. I just have to inform that, I have following changes that needs to be get deployed. And I already got QA and UAT sign off on this. So this is a perfect story that needs to be get deployed. This is the standard part. We used to follow even for the small changes, we used to do the same thing. But sometimes, I mean, this is a separate organization. And with this, another organization where I'm working, that's a small organization, right? That's a small organization. And we don't follow that standard process over here because my appointment is more towards the production support, right? Whatever, right? My appointment, I am working as a production support. I'm working as a developer support over there. And they expect everything to be get launched quickly. So this is up to me to decide whether this has to be tested on sandbox or should I move it to production. But they just wanted everything on the production as early as possible. But I mean, even if the team wanted to have them, everything, whatever they are asking to me for them, they are creating something called as change request. They're asking me for any work, they have to, they have to document that inside something called as change request. It's up to me to decide whether I should work on to that on sandbox or on directly on production. So whenever it's a very small change, and when I feel that it's not going to affect, other business unit by any terms, then I make that change directly in the production. And I make that changes directly in the production. Now, chalo, ab ye ek baat ho gayi. So when you have made certain changes in the production and you wanted, when you wanted that these changes should move on to the sandboxes. The sandboxes should always be, sandboxes should always be the replica of your production. It should always have all those things that your production have. Now there are two ways to do that, right? So as you can see, I have created a field called joining date, which is not there into these two sandboxes. If I will go in the developer sandbox, we don't have that field called joining date over here. Similarly, if I'll go to UAT sandbox, right? If I would go to UAT sandbox, let me close out everything. Yeah. Yes. Just to avoid the confusion. So if I would go to UAT sandbox, if I click on hiring manager, we don't see that field called joining date over here, right? We don't have that field called joining date. We instantly created that field directly in production, which is not recommended although, but due to certain urgency, due to certain reasons, I have directly created this into production. Now I wanted that other two environments should also have them. I wanted that these two environments, your developer sandbox as well as UAT sandbox, they should also have the same functionality. They should also have exactly the same things what the production have. How to do that? How to do that? And see, ye back promotions na, ye koi nahi batata. I tell you this. Nobody would teach this. Nobody would even teach things like this in such a detail. People usually don't do the deployments. It is my luck that I got this chance. Abhi, matlab, udhar to main Copado pe kar raha hu. But at least with, at least with these two organizations, I'm working like in one organization, Everything depends on me. Another organization follow a process and I'm a part of a process. I just have to work into that particular area. So there is again something which I'm getting, you learn day by day. You should maintain that. Uh, you should always think like I am a continuous learner. I'm a student of my life. So with these two organizations, I really have learned a lot of the things, guys. So there are two ways to do that. This is something called as back promotion, back deployment. You are promoting something from higher environment to lower environment. What is your higher environment? Is my production. That is the highest environment where a change can be moved. Beyond this, there is nothing. That whatever changes you committed, right? What is the final commitment? What is the final destination of every change? Is the production. That is the highest most environment a change could achieve. But when you are committing back, when you are trying to send something from that highest environment to other, from the higher to the lower, this is something called as back promotion, back deployment. And always stuck with the terminology. See, I always repeat this kind of things, during whenever we talk, whenever we discuss the things, I always used to use the same terminologies. I wanted you to catch all those terminologies: back promotion, back deployment, higher environments, lower environments, change sets. I wanted you to use the same thing, right? I wanted you to use the same thing in your interviews or during your normal communication as well. This would make your technical vocab. I mean, to improve your technical vocab, uh, this is one of the important things. Just a moment here. Why this Zoom control is not getting height? Uh, 1 second. I'm making certain changes with this. Yeah, this is setting button and automatically show meeting controls where it is. I close 12 monitor full screen automatically. Always show. Yeah, always show. Now it get hidden. Yeah. All right. So I committed a change directly in the production. I wanted my two other environments should have that changes. So how to do that? There are two ways. Let me talk about the first way. The first way, go to the sandbox and perform a refresh activity. So for developer sandbox, I'll be refreshing that, or rather, mm, with UAT, I'll refresh UAT. 1 second, because from UAT I can take it to developer sandbox, or from नहीं UAT से production. नहीं तो मैं इसको refresh कर देता हूँ. From production I'll move it to UAT. हाँ. So I'm going to do one thing. I would be refreshing this developer sandbox. All right. So you have developer, DevPro, partial copy, full copy, right? I have asked you to create the differences between them. No one has given that differences. No one has the time to, आप लोग बहुत बिजी लोग हो यार. मतलब दुनिया में मैंने आप जैसे बिजी लोग नहीं देखे. I have worked with so many of the people, but I'm lucky to work with you guys. You are the most busiest person. All of you are the most busiest person I've seen ever in my life. All right. I feel very, very lucky to work with you guys. All right. So we have the sandboxes, right? There is one point called as refresh interval. Refresh interval. What does this means? This means you can refresh developer sandbox every day. Every day. If yesterday you have refreshed, today also you can refresh that. If you made this sandbox yesterday, when you make it, it becomes refreshed automatically. Or otherwise, there's a button. Otherwise, there's a link by which you can refresh. So if you have refreshed this sandbox yesterday, you can refresh it today as well. Or maybe 1 day interval. Yes, you can refresh it on every day. If you have a partial copy sandbox, you can refresh with a gap of 5 days. That means today, if you have refreshed, you'll have to wait for 5 more days for the next refresh. Between that, if you would try to refresh, it would give you a message that this has been refreshed on that particular day. And because there is not a gap of 5 days, so you'll have to wait. And for full copy sandbox, it is 29 days. You cannot refresh this without a gap of 29. All right. Now let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. So let's say if I have committed a change, I have committed a change directly in the production. I committed a change directly in the production. Like inside in an object, I have created a field. Inside in an object, I created a field. And I created directly this onto production environment, which is, although is not recommended, but due to certain circumstances, I have created that directly into production. But now I wanted this has to be back promoted to all other sandboxes what I have. One of them is full copy. For a moment, let's understand. For an instance, let's assume I wanted you to assume that this sandbox UAT is a full copy sandbox. Understand? Let's take this into account. For an instance, I wanted every one of you to assume that this sandbox UAT is a full copy sandbox. And I have refreshed that recently, maybe in the last week. Last week itself, I have refreshed. So when I have refreshed that in the last week, let's say last Sunday, last Saturday, I have refreshed. I cannot refresh it right now because there must be a gap of 29 days. Or chalo, yesterday itself, I have refreshed that sandbox. Today, I committed certain changes. Can I refresh it now once again so that it should have the latest version of production? No, I cannot do that. I'll have to wait for next 29 days, next 28 days, whatever it would be. I cannot refresh this. I'll have to wait for. So for those much of the days, your full copy sandbox does not have them. Does not have those changes what you have committed. So this is the reason, I would go with another way. I cannot refresh that. Obviously, I cannot refresh that. So I would go with another way. What is that another way? Back promotion. This is my production. You cannot refresh this sandbox. It would require 29 days interval. Today I committed a change, but because it was being refreshed yesterday itself, I'll have to wait for 28 days more. But I wanted these changes. I mean, UAT should also have that changes. It should have that changes as like your prod have, right? So what I would do in that case, I would perform something called as back promotions. देखो ये exact reasons दे रहा हूं मैं आपको. Let's say yesterday I have given one statement, or maybe day before yesterday, okay, in some of the circumstances there is a need that you should bring things from prod to the sandbox. Like question was, can we deploy something from prod to sandbox? Usually people only thought about one way, moving something from lower environment to the higher environment is called as deployment. What is a deployment? Yeah, deployment means moving something from either one sandbox to another sandbox, or maybe from a sandbox to the production. That is what is a deployment. पहली बात तो यहाँ पर गलत है. Deployment just means moving something from one environment to another environment. Yeah, obviously, in most of the cases, maybe 95% of the cases, it actually means moving something from either sandbox to sandbox or sandbox to prod. But yes, in some certain circumstances, we do something called as a back promotion. We do something called as a back deployment. When we even move things from production to the sandbox. अब ये circumstances जो है ना, मैं यहाँ पे end कर सकता था. I can directly show you the things. मैं directly बता सकता था. But for every cause, there is a reason. For every cause, for every action, there is something why we do that, right? There's an event for an action. In our studies, or whatever we do, there is a reason for that. See, the life of a software engineer, it starts from requirement and it's end on the deployment. So if you do something, there's a reason for that. I can simply end up by saying you by letting you know about the process. This is the process by which you can do the back deployment. But you must also have this knowledge why I ever did that. Why should I ever did that? So इतना समय जो लगता है ना मुझको, when I take this, I used to say कि देखो, it's almost like 8 months, 7 months, 6 months. If I would promising you like, you have to be with us for a whole year, I probably, myself would going to take maybe 7 to 8 months out of that. Because starting from zero, right? If I will have to teach this technology starting from zero, the moment when you just came to know about what is a cloud, and how the cloud, how on premises is different from on cloud, वहां से लेके यहाँ तक लेके आना, this would require a lot of effort and lot of things. And it's still a courage of you guys as well. I really appreciate. You have learned a lot of the things. A lot of the things. अगर कोई यूनिवर्सिटी होती and you would have to learn this has to be divided into at least 2 years. And after that, you probably get a degree in this. But यहाँ वैसा सीन नहीं है. At least what is your degrees would be a नौकरी for you guys. So there are a lot of the things that we used to cover. I always prefer to first let you know about requirement and then how to do that. So अभी तुम लोगों ने देखा, I committed a changes directly in production. There was a small urgent change. Now I wanted this change to be get reflected in other two environments as well. I can do this in two different ways, right? अब देखो यहाँ से reason शुरू होता है. Reason आपको बता दिया, अब हम बात आते हैं. So why I'm performing a back deployment? Because considering full copy sandbox, although we don't have it, but थोड़ा सा समझो ना इस चीज को. There is no harm to just assume the things. Like वैसे भी we are very good in assuming the things, right? We have learned a lot of phenomenons where we have to assume the values. So we are very good in our imagination power. So let's assume that we are working on a full copy sandbox. We recently refreshed that, and we have a certain days left for the next refresh. We cannot do the refresh activity in between of that. So there is no another way. There's no another way. If you wanted the changes, what you committed on production should come to that environment, that full copy environment. Right? This is a full copy environment for now. There's no, you cannot refresh this environment. There's no another way apart from back deployment. ठीक है? So that is what I'm trying to say you. चलो, तो I'm going to do one thing. मैं एक काम करता हूँ अभी, because we have two of them. एक पर मैं रिफ्रेश मारता हूँ, एक को बैक डिप्लॉय करके दिखाता. यूएटी आपको पता है कि आई हैव कनेक्टेड दिस फ्रॉम प्रोडक्शन. ये प्रोडक्शन से चेंजेस को एक्सेप्ट कर सकता है, तो इसको एज इट इज छोड़ देता हूँ. डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स को मैं रिफ्रेश मार देता हूँ, बिकॉज देयर इज नो डायरेक्ट कनेक्शन बिटवीन डेवलपर एंड प्रोडक्शन. तो प्रोडक्शन पे अगर कोई चेंजेस आ रहे हैं तो मैं इस पे बैक डिप्लॉय नहीं कर पाऊंगा. इजंट इट? ये डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स जो है वो प्रोडक्शन से कुछ भी रिसीव नहीं कर सकता. ऑलराइट, सो मैं इसको रिफ्रेश कर देता हूँ. आई जस्ट रिफ्रेश दैट सैंडबॉक्स. ये सब बताता है, देखो. हाँ, आई फॉरगॉट टू मेंशन द प्रोसेस. यार मैं वो भूल गया. आफ्टर क्लिकिंग रिफ्रेश बटन you'll come to this page. Go and next, click on the next. ठीक है? When you click on the next, it would ask you for these two things, which is not at all mandatory. Auto activate. Yes, I wanted to make it auto activate. Auto activate मतलब जितने भी users होते हैं, see, select the option to auto activate sandbox immediately. है ना? If you would select this option, you don't require reactivation emails. जो emails आते हैं like you got this all email वगैरह जो भी आता है, तो उसकी हमें जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. Otherwise it would by default follow the standard process. वो आपको email भेजेगा and you'll have to click on those emails to make them active and all, right? तो auto activate कर सकते हैं हम. That is another thing. Class कोई नहीं है, हमको कोई class नहीं है. We don't have any class to get checked and all thing, right? So once you click on this, create. Now it would start its refresh activity. यहाँ आएगा थोड़ा सा अभी लिख के. तो it would start its refresh activity. तो अब ये रिफ्रेश होने के बाद, after this refresh, developer sandbox would have everything as your production. तो इसमें क्या होगा, अभी मैंने जैसे यहाँ हायरिंग मैनेजर ऑब्जेक्ट में आई कमिटेड दैट चेंजेस, तो दैट इज गोइंग टू अपीयर ओवर हियर. ये रिफ्रेश होने के बाद आ जाएगा. कितना टाइम लगता है आई एम नॉट श्योर, बिकॉज दिस ऑलवेज आर सर्टन, इट्स अनसर्टन एक्चुअली. ठीक है, तो वो देख लेते हैं अपन. चलो, वो आ जाएगा उसमें, डोंट वरी अबाउट दैट. अब यूएटी के लिए हमारी दूसरा प्लान है. यूएटी पे मैं बैक डिप्लॉयमेंट करूंगा, बिकॉज आई नो दैट यूएटी कैन एक्सेप्ट the changes from the production. UAT is connected in a bidirectional mode with production. It can send something to prod as well it can receive something from the prod itself, right? So UAT के लिए हमारा कोई दूसरा प्लान है. चलो, तो UAT के लिए हम बैक डिप्लॉयमेंट करेंगे. फॉर दिस इस वाला विंडो एज इट इज छोड़ देते हैं. I'll go to setup once again. This time, see, ये prod है. All right, this is prod production. I'll create an outbound chain set from the production because I wanted to send something, right? HR back promotion P1 version 1. You always try to give the significant name as far as possible, right? Add, same process. What do you wanted to do? I wanted to add a custom field. I just see, I'm not deploying everything, right? I just wanted to add a custom field. I created a custom field inside an object. The name of that was joining date. All right, joining date. So add to chain set. This is a field that I have created. And do I require to have, yeah, page layout, I guess, because I have added that onto the page layout. So I would obviously would require page layout as well, right? Because बाकी ऑब्जेक्ट नहीं लगेगा हमें, ऑब्जेक्ट है ऑलरेडी वहां पे. सो आई जे के एल पी पेज लेआउट एज वेल आई वुड रिक्वायर, बिकॉज आई हैव एडेड दैट ऑन टू द पेज लेआउट. सो मुझे वो पर्टिकुलर पेज लेआउट भी वापस डिप्लॉय करना पड़ेगा, वरना ये प्रोसेस मैनुअल हो जाएगी. अगर आप ऐसा नहीं करते हैं तो फील्ड तो चला जाएगा, आपको पर्सनली उसे पेज लेआउट पे लाना पड़ेगा. तो वो भी कर सकते हैं, बट विच इज नॉट रेकमेंडेड. ट्राई टू ऑलवेज कवर एवरीथिंग. और प्रोफाइल, बिकॉज आपने फील्ड ऐड करा है, उसको प्रोफाइल पे विजिबल किया है, तो हम प्रोफाइल को भी ऐड कर देते हैं. आई गेस दिस मच इज रिक्वायर्ड. इसके अलावा शायद कुछ नहीं बचता है. अगर कुछ बचता है तो हम बाद में रियलाइज करेंगे, तो वी कैन डू दैट मैनुअली, और अगेन वी कैन परफॉर्म दिस डिप्लॉयमेंट. हमारे ऊपर रहता है. ठीक है. सो मैंने वो फील्ड ऐड कर दी, मैंने वो पेज लेआउट भी ऐड कर दिया जहां उस फील्ड को मैंने ड्रॉप किया है, प्लस मैंने वो प्रोफाइल भी ऐड कर दिया. और मेरे हिसाब से इतना ही काफी है, बिकॉज ऑब्जेक्ट वी ऑलरेडी हैव देयर, टैब वी ऑलरेडी हैव देयर, राइट? तो I guess it must sufficient है. So now I'll go and upload this, and it would show me the name of all of those environment where you can send the things from prod. We just have connected UAT for this purpose. तो एक ही नाम बता रहा है यहाँ पे, and upload this. Same process. देखो, कोई other process नहीं है back deployment के. It's the same process. You'll have to wait for some time till the time the deployment is in progress. And meanwhile, यहाँ पे refresh activity start हो चुकी है. I'll go and I'll see this. तो ये देखो processing. It would take certain time. It would take certain time. Usually maybe 5 hours, 4 hours. है ना? इतना तो लगता है इसको. ठीक है, चलो. And I'll tell you one story. One of my friend. अच्छा, whenever you refresh something, this means everything inside in this sandbox is going to be get erased. Understand? Everything inside in this sandbox is going to be get erased. सब कुछ मिट जाएगा. तो अगर तुमने यहाँ पे कुछ बना रखा है डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स पे, और तुमने उसको रिफ्रेश कर दिया प्रोडक्शन से रिफ्रेश कर सकते हैं आप, और कोई दरिया नहीं होता है, तो वो सैंडबॉक्स से सब कुछ डिलीट हो जाता है. ऑल राइट, लेट मी शो यू समथिंग. ऑल राइट, तो चेन सेट अपना अपलोड हो गया है. प्रोडक्शन से हमने बैक डिप्लॉय किया है यूएटी पे. सो लेट्स गो टू यूएटी, रिपीट द सेम प्रोसेस. आप सेटअप में जाइए, एंड बिकॉज दिस टाइम यू आर रिसीविंग समथिंग, यू हैव टू गो विद इनबाउंड चेन सेट. इनबाउंड में चलते हैं. जो चेन सेट आया हुआ है यहाँ पे, उसको हमने एक्सेप्ट करना है. वी वुड फर्स्ट विड वैलिडेट एंड डिप्लॉय दैट, राइट? सो हमारे पास में बैक प्रमोशन ये चेन सेट आया हुआ, जिसको मैं वैलिडेट करता हूँ. आई सी टू दिस कि मुझे कुछ एरर मिलता है इसमें, या इट इज गुड टू गो फॉर डिप्लॉयमेंट. लेट्स गो विद द डिप्लॉयमेंट स्टेटस. देयर आर टू थिंग्स. दो कंपोनेंट है, एक तो फील्ड है, ओ तीन कंपोनेंट, सॉरी. द फील्ड है, पेज लेआउट है, और प्रोफाइल है. देयर आर थ्री थिंग्स, तीन चीजें हैं. वैलिडेशन सक्सीडेड, वैलिडेशन सक्सीड हो चुका है. सो लेट्स गो एंड नाउ डिप्लॉय दिस. इसमें वैलिडेशन हो चुका है सक्सेसफुली. तो अब वैलिडेशन हो गया, तो फिर हम इसे डिप्लॉयमेंट करेंगे. तो 3 out of 3 डिप्लॉयमेंट इज नाउ सक्सीडेड, राइट? आई विल गो टू दिस ऑब्जेक्ट. मैं इस ऑब्जेक्ट पे जाता हूँ. यहाँ पे हमने डिप्लॉयमेंट मारा है इसके ऊपर. अब हम वेरीफाई करते हैं. दिस इज दैट रिकॉर्ड, या कोई भी रिकॉर्ड ले लो. सी यू हैव दिस फील्ड जॉइनिंग डेट. फील्ड आ गई, पेज लेआउट पे आ गई, और प्रोफाइल को विजिबल है. तीनों चीजें एक साथ हो गई. सिस्टम एडमिन प्रोफाइल पे हूं मैं अभी. सिस्टम एडमिन को फील्ड विजिबल है. पेज लेआउट पे फील्ड आ चुकी है, और फील्ड भी आ चुकी है. तीनों चीजें आपकी कवर हो गई. ये था बैक डिप्लॉयमेंट. ये था बैक डिप्लॉयमेंट, बिकॉज दिस एनवायरमेंट यूएटी वाज कनेक्टेड, इट वाज कनेक्टेड टू रिसीव द चेंजेस फ्रॉम प्रोडक्शन, यू वर बीइंग एबल टू डू दैट। अगर ये एनवायरनमेंट कनेक्टेड नहीं, जैसे कि डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स इज नॉट कनेक्टेड, इज नॉट आई मीन इज नॉट केपेबल टू रिसीव एनी चेंज डायरेक्टली फ्रॉम प्रोडक्शन, तो इस तरह के सैंडबॉक्स को आप क्या कर सकते हो कि वो प्रोडक्शन के साथ हमेशा मैच करे। सो देयर इज ओनली वन वे टू रिफ्रेश, बट व्हेन यू रिफ्रेश समथिंग इट वुड सब्सिक्वेंटली गोइंग टू इरेज एवरीथिंग इनसाइड द सैंडबॉक्स। तो ठीक है, चलो ये ध्यान रखना। हाँ, तुम एक कहानी मेरे को याद आ रही है, कहानी नहीं है, दिस इज अ रियल फैक्ट। देयर इज वन माय फ्रेंड, उसको एक सैंडबॉक्स रिफ्रेश करने बोला। अब वो नींद में था कि क्या था पता नहीं यार, ही गो टू दैट लिस्ट और उसने गलत सैंडबॉक्स रिफ्रेश कर दिया था। और सैंडबॉक्स रिफ्रेश करने का मतलब ये होता है कि ही वाज एक्सेसिंग प्रोडक्शन एज वेल, बिकॉज सैंडबॉक्स तो आप प्रोडक्शन से ही रिफ्रेश कर सकते हो ना, देयर इज नो अनदर वे। सैंडबॉक्स जो होता है यू कैन ओनली रिफ्रेश दिस फ्रॉम द प्रोडक्शन, तो उसके पास प्रोडक्शन का एक्सेस था एंड ही रिफ्रेश द रॉन्ग सैंडबॉक्स, वो पूरा सब कुछ इरेज्ड आउट हो गया। दिस वाज अ बिग थिंग राइट, उसको जॉब छोड़ना पड़ा उस चीज के लिए। कंपनी हैज आस्क्ड टू सिंपली रिजाइन, देयर इज नो अदर एक्सक्लेशन, आप छोड़ दो, बोले रिजाइन करो उसको। मतलब दे हैव गिवन द सैलरी ऑफ 3 मंथ्स एंड एक ही महीने में उसको गायब कर दिया, जाओ बोले आप। बिकॉज दैट वाज अ डिजास्टर, आई एम टेलिंग यू दैट वाज अ डिजास्टर। उस सैंडबॉक्स पे जो भी काम कर रहा होगा, जो भी टीम काम कर रहा होगा, दे लॉस्ट एवरीथिंग। उन्होंने कितना समय से उस पर काम किया था, दे लॉस्ट एवरीथिंग एंड दैट एवरीथिंग हैज टू बी रीवर्क। सोचो कितना बड़ा ब्लंडर है, दिस इज नॉट अ ब्लंडर, दिस इज नॉट अ मिस्टेक, इट इज समथिंग डिजास्टर। तो सैंडबॉक्स रिफ्रेशिंग इज नॉट दैट मच easy thing, understand. There must be a valid reason. Before that, you'll have to inform this to everyone. So even though if I do this on my sandbox, मगर मैं मेरा sandbox या किसी का भी sandbox refresh करता हूँ, so I circulate that email first of all. मैं email circulate करता हूँ। उसके बाद में आई रिक्वायर द एक्सेप्टेंस। अगर एक बिजनेस यूनिट भी अपना एक्सेप्टेंस नहीं देता है ना, मैं रिफ्रेश नहीं करता। नहीं करता मतलब नहीं करता, नहीं तुम्हारा एक्सेप्टेंस दो। आई वांटेड एवरीथिंग ऑन रिवर्टेड ऑन टू द सेम ईमेल चेन, ताकि कल चल के अगर कोई खड़ा हो जाए बोले कि यार तुमने सैंडबॉक्स रिफ्रेश कर दिया विदाउट माय कंसर्न, तो वो दैट बिकम्स अ क्वेश्चनेबल क्वांटिटी। और ये हो चुका है ना मेरे एक फ्रेंड के साथ में। अब उसने तो गलती किया, एक्चुअली उसकी तो गलती थी, लिटरली गलती थी। सैंडबॉक्स रिफ्रेशमेंट जैसी चीज को हल्के में नहीं लेना चाहिए। एनीवेज, चलिए, सो अभी दिस वुड रिक्वायर सम टाइम, विल डू समथिंग एल्स मीनवाइल, इसको समय लगता ही है। So this sandbox UAT, now let me conclude this. This sandbox UAT, because it was capable to perform, it was capable to accept the changes from production. So that's why मैंने यहाँ पे I did something called as a back promotion or back deployment, right? So I send the things from production and I have received them onto UAT. So now UAT becomes compatible, UAT becomes mirrored, UAT becomes replica of your production, right? So this is one way where you can send the things from the production. You can do the back deployments, but that can be done only with those environments which are able to accept the changes from production. Like your UAT is connected, right? Isn't it? UAT is connected with prod in that bidirectional way that it can receive the changes from product, right? It can receive the changes. And that's why you are capable to do that. Developer sandbox, although has no connection in between. So the only way to make this compatible with prod is to refresh the sandbox. But when you are refreshing, you should also have this thought in mind that it's going to, it's going to erase everything inside this. So when you are refreshing a sandbox, you should take the concern of everybody. You should take the concern of everyone, those who work with this sandbox. And this concern must always be taken in written. ओरल में कभी नहीं करना, देयर इज नो प्रूफ ऑफ ओरल थिंग्स। ओरल कमिटमेंट्स आर नो कमिटमेंट्स, ऑल्दो ये तो जिंदगी में याद रखो बस। ओरल का देयर इज नो स्पेस फॉर एनी ओरल कमिटमेंट। आई लव यू लिख के दे बॉस, आई विल मैरी यू लिख के दे बॉस, देयर इज नो कमिटमेंट, ओरल कमिटमेंट कुछ होता ही नहीं है ये, ठीक है? सो इफ यू आर रिफ्रेशिंग अ सैंडबॉक्स यू मस्ट ऑलवेज टेक अ रिटर्न कंसर्न विद एवरीबडी हु इज यूजिंग दैट सैंडबॉक्स, उसके बाद ही सैंडबॉक्स को रिफ्रेश करना, वरना नौकरी चली जाएगी। अच्छा, नौकरी नहीं जाती। देखो एक चीज और याद रखो, वैसे यूजुअली आईटी में कोई ऐसा करता नहीं है, बट क्या होता है जब बीजीवी इनिशिएट होता है, यू गो एंड टेक द इंटरव्यू ऑफ नेक्स्ट कंपनी, यू क्वालिफाइड एंड यू स्टार्ट टेकिंग द जॉब ओवर देयर, दे वुड इनिशिएट समथिंग कॉल्ड एज अ बैकग्राउंड वेरिफिकेशन. दे विल आस्क योर पास्ट एम्प्लॉयर whether this person I'm taking right now is worthful or not. Should I proceed with his profile? Should I take him or not? They would, वैसे आपने बड़ी गलती करी है, और they would not usually mention this. इतना हर कोई करता है, बट क्या पता वो चिढ़ बैठे हुए हो तुम्हारे ऊपर में. मैनेजर वुड टेक दिस, नहीं, ही इज नॉट, ही हैज मतलब बाय he work very lazily or whatever, he refresh our sandbox. It was not an accident. He was not concentrating, he does not work constant, he does not concentrate on his work fully, so he's not an efficient guy. हो गया, वो नौकरी भी गई आपके यहाँ से. यूजुअली ऐसा नहीं होता है, बट क्या पता अगला वाला इतना चिढ़ के बैठा, वो तुमने उसकी वाट लगा दी हो, तो वो फिर तुम्हारा नेगेटिव दे देगा. तो अगर अगर नेगेटिव आता है ना बीजीवी, तो आपको नया कंपनी नहीं रखता है बॉस. इसलिए ये बहुत सोच समझ के करना. ये एटम बॉम्ब है, इसको आग लगाने से पहले सोच लेना. इफ यू आर डूइंग अ सैंडबॉक्स रिफ्रेश एक्टिविटी, यू मस्ट हैव अ कंसर्न विथ एवरीबडी कि बॉस ये रिफ्रेश होने वाला है. ठीक है ना, ऐसा. तो ये याद रखना. So these are the two ways you can make an environment, a sandbox environment, compatible with your production. Either you do something called as back promotion, or you can refresh the sandbox, whole sandbox you can refresh that. All right. So चलो, जब तक ये चल रहा है, I guess we can see this, right? आज ही हम देख लेंगे इसको. I mean it's going a good progress. Otherwise sometime it would require 5 days. मैंने देखा है, वो production पे depend करता है. If your production has been, production has production contains a lot of the things that needs to be get back, तो sandbox कभी कभी 5 दिन तक refresh होते रहते हैं. So it all depends how much things we have to mirror into the sandboxes. That this progress completely depends on the size of production, in short. चलिए, so I have something in my, I kept that pending just for you guys, but we are not going to record that. Rather you see it. Rather you just see it. All right, so now we see whether this has been refreshed. हो गया, ये refreshed हो चुका है, and right now this is in the process of activating. तो ये activate होने के बाद में we are supposed to get one email. ये तो खैर back promotion था, that your sandbox has been refreshed. Your sandbox has been refreshed. So let me change this closed. अरे मैंने उसको close, production को ही close कर दिया. नहीं है, we have this. So it is activating those changes. So I can go back and I can see. Meanwhile, मैं refresh करके देख लेता हूँ एक बार. No, right now we don't have. अभी वो आने का है यहाँ पे. The changes is yet to appear over here. ठीक है. So this requires some sustainable time for refreshing activity. That depends on the size of production, how much data, how much changes are there in the production. So the refresh activity, how much time it would require, this is very uncertain. So all we can do is, like, we can just wait for this. And by the way, your deployment is getting completed. हो गया. There's nothing more about this. But in the next weekend, next weekend, I mean, not on Saturday, but on Sunday, I would be taking a class on lightning experience, followed by, in the next week, we're going to study about the flows. So the plan for next week would be like Monday to Saturday would be development. We'll continue the development from Monday to Saturday, and only on Sunday particularly, we would going to, for this Sunday, for the coming Sunday, we would learn lightning experience, which is a small thing. And next to that, in the coming day, I mean, next to that Sunday, we're going to study the lightning flows. So that is all the plan. So let's wait for some time. I guess it would take this, or else I can see it from view fields. I'm just curious to know whether that field has been transferred. No. What was the field name? Date of joining. Yes, date of joining. Oh, that is yet to be committed. Let's wait for some more time. Let me pause this recording. Maybe in 5 or 10 minutes it would be ended. Otherwise, ठीक है, मैं आपको password दे दूंगा इस environment के, and you can check it by your own. Maybe today end of the day, right? So let's wait for some time. I think it would take certain time. So एक काम करते हैं. I would going to give you this all passwords and everything. और मैं लेक्चर्स अभी नहीं शेयर कर रहा हूँ. उसका रीजन थोड़ा सा फीस कलेक्शन शुरू है. वो I would be sharing this password to you guys. ठीक है? By today evening, अभी तो नहीं, but by today evening, कहाँ पर हो तुम लोग, ये हो, इसको चेक कर लेना. So these are all those passwords, right? You would just require to log in into this 30 days trial account. बाकी का दे दिया है. If you wanted, you can go. Otherwise, हाँ, वो वेरिफिकेशन के लिए you would require to make a login into that developer sandbox, यहाँ पे देखने के लिए कि वो चेंजेस रिफ्लेक्ट हुए कि नहीं. यहाँ पर वो कस्टम फील्ड जो हमने बनाई है, ज्वाइनिंग डेट, वेदर इट इज रिफ्लेक्टेड ओवर हियर और नॉट, तो ये आप लोग देख लेना. ठीक है. सो दिस इज ऑल. लेट मी नाउ समराइज व्हाट वी हैव स्टडीड from past 2 weeks on this. First of all, we understand what is the process of deployment, right? Then we understand things like what is a sandbox, what's a production, and what are the types of sandboxes, what are the different differences between each of the type of the sandboxes. This was maybe second or third topic. Then we understood, like, if we wanted to create a sandbox, obviously we cannot create this in the developer edition what we have. So what to do? So we know, like, we understand, we learn like how we can create a 30 days trial account, and within that account, 30 days trial account, we have created sandboxes. Then we also have understood a lot of the things actually we have discussed, which was basically out of box functionalities, types of sandboxes and other things as well. Then we understand, like, how we can create that chain sets, what is the meaning of inbound and outbound chain set. Then we understand how to add the components to it, and if we wanted to at all add the profiles, to how to add those profiles and everything. Then we understand how to deploy the changes. When we are deploying, after deployment, we have to first validate that. Even we are validating the changes, there are two different processes that is followed when you are validating a non-coding component, or else when you are validating a coding component. So how to do that, that is what also we have learned with this, right? Then we also have understood, like, after deployment, if there is certain manual step that needs to be get followed post deployment, that is also we have covered. And about, like, if you wanted to make a sandbox compatible with the production, so how to do that, that is also, there are two processes: back deployment, back promotions, and refreshing a sandbox. So this everything have been covered. There is nothing apart from this has been left in the deployment. That is all what is a deployment is all about. All right. So today, end of the day, go and make a login into this 30 days trial account. If you wanted to have your practice, you can go with the same one. Otherwise, you can create it by your own. I don't have any problem. Mera kaam khatam ho chuka, and you have 24 more days with this. If you wanted to practice, you can take it out. मुझे कोई issue नहीं है इसमें. ठीक है? And check for this. Go and refresh this and check for this. कि वेदर यहाँ पे लिख के आता है एक्टिवेटेड और रेडी टू यूज, ऐसा कुछ लिख के आता है यहाँ पे. आई एम नॉट श्योर क्या आता है, मुझे याद नहीं है. तो एक्टिवेटेड या रेडी टू यूज ऐसा कुछ लिख के आता है यहाँ पे. उसके बाद में आपको देखना है कि वेदर दोस चेंजेस हैज बीन कमिटेड. तो आप डेव सैंडबॉक्स, डेवलपर सैंडबॉक्स जो आपने बनाया है, उसमें जाएंगे और देखेंगे यहाँ पर एक फील्ड ऐड होता है कि नहीं होता है, ज्वाइनिंग डेट नाम का. ठीक है. दैट्स ऑल फॉर टुडे गाइस. दैट्स ऑल फॉर डिप्लॉयमेंट. थैंक यू सो मच. एनी क्वेश्चंस? एनी क्वेश्चंस? Any questions? All right then. Thank you so much for joining.